In 1957, a Canadian woman checked into a psychiatric hospital for mild depression. She checked out 9 months later, not knowing her own name, unable to recognize her husband and children, and having lost every memory of the first 30 years of her life. Her doctor had been secretly funded by the CIA to see how completely he could erase a human mind and build it back from scratch. She was not a criminal. She was not a spy. She had no idea any of this was happening to her. And she was one of hundreds. This is MKUltra, the CIA's classified mind control program. And what makes it truly disturbing is not just what they did. It is that we only know about it at all because a government employee made a mistake and forgot to destroy the files. To understand MKUltra, you have to understand the paranoia that created it. In the early 1950s, the United States was convinced that the Soviet Union and China had developed techniques to control human minds. American prisoners of war returning from Korea were confessing to crimes they had not committed and denouncing their own country on camera. The CIA called it brainwashing, and they were terrified they were already losing a war they did not know how to fight. In 1953, CIA Director Allen Dulles authorized a secret program with a simple and chilling objective: find out if it is possible to control a human mind completely, and if it is, learn how to do it. The program was called MKUltra. It ran for 22 years, involved at least 150 separate research projects, and used hundreds of unwitting human subjects who never consented to any of it. The lead scientist was a man named Sidney Gottlieb, a CIA chemist who believed that LSD might be the key to breaking down human psychological resistance. Gottlieb's team began secretly dosing people with LSD without their knowledge or consent, including CIA employees, military personnel, prisoners, mental patients, and members of the general public. One of the most disturbing operations was called Project Midnight Climax. The CIA set up safe houses in San Francisco and New York, hired sex workers to lure men off the street, and secretly dosed them with LSD, while CIA operatives watched through two-way mirrors and took notes. The men had no idea what was happening to them. The CIA operatives sipped martinis and recorded the results. This went on for years. The Canadian doctor the CIA funded was a man named Ewan Cameron, head of psychiatry at McGill University in Montreal, and one of the most respected psychiatrists in the world. Cameron had a theory he called psychic driving. He believed that if you could completely erase a person's existing personality, you could then reprogram them from scratch. To test this theory, he subjected patients to weeks of drug-induced sleep, sometimes up to 65 days without being properly awake. He played recorded messages on repeat for up to 16 hours a day directly into their ears while they slept. He gave them doses of LSD, paralytic drugs, and electroconvulsive therapy at up to 40 times the normal intensity. His patients came in with mild conditions like anxiety and depression. They left unable to feed themselves, unable to speak in complete sentences, and with no memory of who they had been before they walked through his door. Cameron kept detailed records of everything he did. The CIA funded all of it and asked no questions. At least one person died directly as a result of MKUltra experiments. Frank Olson was a US Army biochemist who was secretly dosed with LSD by Sidney Gottlieb at a CIA retreat in 1953. 9 days later, he fell from the window of a New York hotel room and died on the pavement below. The CIA called it suicide. His family called it murder. In 1994, his body was exhumed, and a forensic examination found evidence of a blow to the head before the fall, suggesting he had been knocked unconscious before going through the window. No charges were ever filed. In 1973, CIA Director Richard Helms ordered the destruction of all MKUltra files. Most were shredded, but a batch of 20,000 documents had been misfiled in a financial records building that was not included in the destruction order. They were discovered in 1977 during a Freedom of Information Act request. Those misfiled documents are the only reason any of this is public knowledge today. Senate hearings were held in 1977, and Sidney Gottlieb was called to testify. He admitted the program existed, but claimed to remember almost nothing specific about what had been done. He was never charged with a crime. He retired to a farm in Virginia where he practiced folk dancing and lived quietly until his death in 1999. The Canadian victims of Ewan Cameron's experiments eventually sued the CIA and the Canadian government. They received small settlements. No admission of wrongdoing was ever made. MKUltra was not a conspiracy theory. It was a conspiracy fact, confirmed by the United States government in congressional testimony, documented in 20,000 pages of recovered files and acknowledged by 2 American presidents. The question it leaves behind is not whether your government is capable of doing something like this to its own citizens. It already did. The question is what else was in the files they actually managed to destroy.